This was Logan Paulson on Take Command. I wanted to get to the bottom of the Brian Flores defense because you hired a coordinator who was his number 2 to run the Flores defense. Washington made no bones about the fact that after Flores shoved it on him and they got shut out by the Vikings 31-0, they really liked what Flores had done that day. He tricked them. They didn't have a plan for what he had brought, and so they interviewed him. They wanted him. He said no, but they end up going with Daronte Jones, who is his top lieutenant and his right-hand man. This was Logan on why the Flores defense is so respected.
One of the things that I think that style of defense does is it dictates to the offense. So a lot of times, like, for example, when you're creating a game plan, you're like, oh, they're going to be in a nice 4-down structure, or they're going to be in a odd 3-4 structure, and they like to bring this pressure on first down. Does our run account for it? Sure. Does our pass protection account for it? Sure. All right, now let's move on to third down, and that's where the blitzes get a little exotic. I think the thing that Flores does, and the thing that characterizes him most acutely, is the fact that he is dictating on first and second down in a way that is so incredibly unique to him. And what I mean by that is there's this boogeyman offensively in the room every time you're talking about third down, where it's like 0. What is our answer versus 0 pressure? And the thing that Flores does that I think makes his defense so brilliant is he shows you 0 pressure a lot. He shows you 0 pressure on first down. He shows you on second down. He shows you on third down. And again, when you show me 0, as an offensive player, as an offensive coordinator, I have to change what I want to do. Not all runs are good versus 0. Not all protections are good versus 0. So now he is essentially forcing the offense into a box, essentially playing left-handed and saying, I'm dictating what you can do and what you feel comfortable doing. So just as an example, like on first down, let's say we've got a quick game up, right? He knows that if I want to push the football down the field, right, like we can't do it because we're going to bring more people than you can block. And so I'm going to have my defensive backs stand in a position where we can defend the quick game and we feel comfortable with you not throwing the ball over our heads. And I think that is the thing that makes him so brilliant. And then the other thing that is so good about it is he shows you 0, but they can drop into cover 2. They can drop into a cross dog. They can drop into a 4-man overload pressure with 3 deep, 3 underneath principles as a fire zone. And so there is a lot of diversity to the system while kind of starting in this base look with this base principle that really, again, like I remember I like to kind of go through and like game plan the defenses when I'm getting ready in the week. And I left that week thinking, I don't know what I can consistently do versus this group other than try to run certain gap scheme runs. And if they know that, they can stop them. And so I think that's the thing that the Flores defense is so challenging to do, is they're dictating the offense. And again, then you can hide your personnel. You can hide what you're doing in a way that some of these other defenses, like we mentioned McDonald, like you need a really good defensive line to do that. Vic Fangio, you need a really good defensive line to do that. Here, you just need good, intelligent football players to line up and execute at a high level. The scheme will take care of the rest, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited about the hire.
So that's Logan Paulson from a new episode of Take Command we recorded last night after the news. So Danny, here's what I loved about that, the reason I wanted to play it. It's a really well-articulated way of explaining a thing that I think a lot of us notice.
Right.
Which is...
But it quantifies it.
To sum it up, I would say Brian Flores calls every down like it's third down and you've got to throw, and he's trying to get the ball out of your hands. That aggressiveness, like I remember a couple times a season when Jim Haslett, when I was on the beat, or whoever the coordinator was would call like a 0 blitz in a big spot. And if they got beat, guys would be furious. I remember D'Angelo Hall in the locker room one time going nuts about a 0 they got beat on. But Brian Flores lives this way. And it's not always a blitz, by the way. It just looks like it before every single snap. I talk about having 6 across the line, not knowing who's coming or going. But what I loved what Logan was talking about is a lot of coordinators that are aggressive do that on third down. He does it on every down. And what it does is you are in the head of the offense and they adjust to you. We can't, if they are sending everybody, we can't run this. So let's run something a little bit safer. If they are sending everybody, this pass play, probably needs to come out quicker. So let's adjust to this quick game concept. That's where we talk about dictating terms to the offense. A lot of times defenses do that on third down and obvious passing. He just lives that way first and second. Is it risky? Yes. Do you get burned sometimes? Absolutely. but he lives with the results.
So here's the only thing that I thought of while Logan was talking, and it's so insightful, it's so good. What has been a common theme throughout these bad defenses over the years, not just with this regime, but the previous one and ones before that? Do you remember the thing they always had to do midway through the season? What's the word that always comes up? We have to simplify. Communication issues. We've got to simplify.
Communicate is the one I was thinking.
We need to simplify things so guys can play aggressive and just fly around. What that sounds like to me is what I love. I love everybody being smart and being on their P's and Q's and knowing what they're supposed to do. And we're not actually doing this, we're disguising this, but it makes it look like this, we're doing that. That, to me, again, requires a level of intellectual capacity that has been absent from these defenses over the years here, right? That's the only thing I worry about. Now, you're hoping personnel will fit that and will be attuned to that and will be on their P's and Q's. But how many times has this defense, again, not with Brian Flores or a disciple therein, been burned a bunch and a bunch of, the Josh Roman memorial point to let you know that it wasn't me, it was this guy, you should have been there, communication, we need to simplify things. That's always the way. That's not simple. What he's talking about and what this defense is, it's the furthest from simple possible. It is, you're in one thing, but you have to disguise it to make it look like something else all the time, not just a third down blitz package. You get out of bed disguising your looks. That's really, really challenging to do, especially if you're just kind of on autopilot. So that, to me, is the biggest uphill climb for the new DC.
The Minnesota Vikings blitzed, just the first number I looked up here. There are other sites that do this as well. But what I found is about 48% of the time this season.
That's unbelievable.
Which was number one in the NFL. And then there are a lot of other teams who also blitzed a bunch, but that is at the top. And I would just like to go down being aggressive, which, by the way, they don't that often. It's not like this defense doesn't rank really well or that they don't have a lot of success. Now, they do have pretty good players. I don't think they have an elite group by any means. I don't think it's one of the more talented defenses in the league, but they certainly have a better defensive core of players than, say, Washington does right now, and that's going to be up to Adam Peters to fix that. He's at the Senior Bowl standing on the sideline today watching college players run around. This is the process. You got to go get some Billies and Joes so that your D coordinator can dial up X's and O's with those guys. But I look at what has been consistent success now for the Minnesota Vikings year over year, and I see a team that was third in yards per play this past season. They were 8th against the run, and that's an area where they're a little more susceptible sometimes. That's kind of the underbelly. I don't care that much about that. I'm not saying you can't. You cannot be terrible against the run, and you can't give up 7 yards a carry in games that matter. But if you're going to be worse against either the run or the pass, I want to be worse against the run. They were top 10 against the pass. They were number 2 in sacks per pass attempt with all those pressures. They were 8th in first downs per game, meaning they did a good job on third down. They got you off the field. They were 4th, by the way, at getting off the field on third down. Mm-hmm. Like, these are staple hallmark areas of good defense. And 3 of the last 4 years, Danny, tell me you wouldn't welcome this. They were top 10 in takeaways.
That's again, it's a philosophy. You are willing to push and pull. You turn one fader up, one gets turned down. That's okay. Until you have Houston's defense, you can't turn every fader up unless you're the 2000 Ravens or Legion of Boom or one of these unbelievable juggernaut defenses. You don't get to take away everything. You could take away some stuff, and this defense and this philosophy certainly does that. But you touched on something. You know my view, and if you guys are probably sick of me saying it. As long as you're above a minimum threshold of run stopping, that's good enough, honestly, in this league. Because teams, the run stops itself. You get a missed assignment, your player makes a play, a holding penalty. It's going to be 3rd and 7 at some point on a drive. That's where money is made. That's where games are won and lost. That's where fortunes change one way or the other. Can you stop that 4th and 4, right? That's how you win. And a great pass defense improves everything else. This regime this past year decided the best way to improve their pass defense was to have a great run defense. In the words of Dr. Phil, how's that working out for you? Did not work. Nope, wrong. Try again, go back to the drawing board, and that's what this is to me.
I don't know if the plan is as simple as Daronte Jones just running the Flores defense. That should be the plan, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I hope it is, but it may not be. He coached with Vance Joseph. He coached with Mike Zimmer.
Yeah.
He has been in other rooms, and I don't just mean recently in the NFL in Minnesota, but I mean all over the place. D1, D2, D3 in college. CFL, NFL. He's been everywhere. He's 13 stops. So he knows 3-4. He knows 4-3. He can run a bunch of stuff. I just think that the reason you go get him is because you want some of the Flores stuff. You just don't know also, can he run it effectively or as well, or is he the next Flores? Or, you could give a lot of assistants the keys to do the thing that they've learned as an apprentice over several years. It doesn't mean they're going to ace it. So this could go either way. I love the idea, though. And for the reasons that I wanted Brian Flores, I am intrigued by this. But we can open up the phones for you guys at 800-636-1067 on the Minnesota defense here, or would you rather maybe major in that and minor in some other things? Because I guess selfishly, Danny, I hope he just runs what the Vikings run, and if it's a worse version of it, so be it. So instead of third, you're 16th, and instead of being number 4 on third down, you're number 14. But what I care more about is the philosophy, the paradigm, the lifestyle of we're bringing the heat, and you got to deal with that. And as my players get better and I build this thing up, ideally over a couple of years, the results will too.
What I worry about on a couple of different fronts is this. Think about when Scott Turner, neophyte offensive coordinator, was here.
By the way, sorry to cut you off. I'll remember where you're at. But did you see Scott Turner's tweet?
No.
Scott Turner is like super active on Twitter for a guy who's still coaching in the league. I found that interesting down the stretch of the year. He was like saying Kyle Shanahan should be the coach of the year while he was like a coach for the Jets. I just thought that was random in like week 15. But anyway, somebody tweeted that they hated the Jets because they're like, I'm watching, it was a Jets fan, and they're like, Sam Darnold's about to be in the Super Bowl, and they got this and this, and I hate the Jets. And Scott Turner, like 2 days after the Jets fired him, he was their pass game coordinator this year, retweeted that and said, me too.
Oh.
And I thought that was great.
Scott, what are you doing, guy?
So I just thought it was funny. I wasn't trying to get him in trouble. I mean, everyone else did too. I retweeted it, and I was like, this is a candidate for Coach of the Year. This guy got fired by them 2 days ago, and he's saying he hates them. By the time I woke up the next morning, the tweet had been deleted.
Ah, yes.
So maybe he got it. Someone got to him and said,
I got wise there.
Maybe not. But I thought it was a funny tweet.
Yeah, maybe don't say you hate your former employer. The
anyway,
NFL teams don't like that.
You're it. You were talking about Scott Turner.
Yeah, but when Scott Turner was here, what could Ron Rivera do? Saunter down that hallway, go, Scott, let me mate with you. I really want to mate with you. Let's talk real quick, okay? Be where your fate are. Run it more. Okay, thanks, bye. And now it gets dictated. Right? So I worry about influence there from the head coaching philosophy or otherwise. Hey, guy that's never called plays before, let me get my grubby little fingers into this pie and maybe say a couple of things about how we have to do it. Hey, our offense may struggle a little bit, so you can't blitz and give up something big down the field, etc. My point is, or my hope is rather, just the opposite end of the fear is, we went to this restaurant. We got served an unbelievable meal. We want the guy that helped make it. Don't ask him. You went to I'm just making it up. You went to a sushi restaurant. You got the sous chef from the sushi joint. That's great. Now run the steakhouse. Let him run the exact thing that he was doing. That's my hope. Is that's why they went and got it. That they were so wildly impressed with Flores, the scheme, and how sophisticated it was, and we want his sous chef to go do that. Not a guy that we want to mold and start to chip away and bother and go, hey, our offense is struggling right now. You can't zero blitz and give up a touchdown because we can't be down by more than a couple of points or whatever. You hired this guy to be this guy. Let him be this guy.
Well, here's another reason, too, Danny, why I think they needed to make this hire yesterday, the day before, today, like sooner rather than later. It seemed to me like people were pretty content, just kind of, let's play this out, slow play it. If it's Carl Scott in a couple weeks, no problem. We'll wait till after the Super Bowl, and this thing can just last forever. I did not like that because the East-West Shrine game has already happened. Washington sent a bunch of scouts there to watch a bunch of defensive talent.
That's a good point.
The Senior Bowl is this week.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Peters is there with all your top scouts. If you don't know what scheme you are running and you don't know who your coordinator is,
then what are you looking for?
You are way behind the curve on those meetings and those scouting opportunities, in my opinion. In other words, the job of Adam Peters in the scouting department is to go get the players that will best fit the defense they're going to run, and very specifically, play the way that Daronte Jones wants them to play. Well, how on earth do you do the best job scouting and picking based on the players of the East-West Shrine game when you don't know what defense you're running? If you hire Jonathan Gannon, it's one thing. If you hire Jones, it's another thing. Denard Wilson, it's another thing. So the longer you let that go, we're into draft season now. The two biggest weeks from scouting, like live on the field with bowl-type games, last week and this week. So now that they actually have a guy, your scouts, and it should have already happened, I'm sure, but if not, it's a 4-hour Zoom today and tomorrow ahead of or around these practices at the Senior Bowl going, what are we looking for? What linebacker skills do we need? What safety skills? And I didn't hear a lot of people talking about that. But the timing of this started to bother me, that they didn't have the guy as these things were starting. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, how does this inform what they're going to do at number 7? You're going to need an edge regardless. So like David Bailey could be plug and play as a speed rusher. But because they went this route, is there a Van Ginkel-ish kind of guy that can play some edge, that can play some green dot, that can move? Van Ginkel doesn't. But I'm saying in this defense, that can play green dot. Is there more of an inclination that safety is really important and you want that robber to come downhill and maybe you get a guy like a Caleb Downs? Like, to me, I think going and getting Daronte Jones screams maybe Sonny Styles makes a lot of sense at 7, the Mike linebacker from Ohio State. Or Caleb, you're telling me that he's so good at developing DBs, young guys at the safety position. Maybe you go get Caleb Downs now because he's your coordinator. Not that he wouldn't have fit in any scheme, but like it starts to make me think about those guys a little bit more. And I'm just glad that they figured this out at a time where you still have some runway ahead of you for some of the in-person draft stuff that's happening in the next 10 days.
I think it's a smart point, and it's something I hadn't thought of exactly, but the calendar says that's why the NFL will never agree to do the thing that I want, which is just a moratorium on all of it until the season's actually done. So you don't have this weird, sort of coaching interviews while they're preparing for championship games and otherwise. But yeah, the evaluation calendar doesn't slow down, so you need to get this done ASAP. You'd rather have it than sort of be looking for it, because to your point, you don't know what you're shopping for yet. Like, well, that guy's fast. Do I care about that more? Do I care about his lateral quickness? Or he thrived in this scheme, and I give him an A grade for that, but we're not running anything close to that, so I just waste my time. That's intuitive and important.
I don't think this will happen because I think this guy's going to retire. But I wonder if this year's Bobby Wagner and this year's longtime veteran, older free agent type piece that Washington brings in could be someone that knows this defense really well. And I was just thinking, looking at Vikings players, like Harrison Smith is 36, is going to be a free agent after this year. I'm pretty sure I saw that he was like hugging all his teammates after the last game, and it sounds like he's going to retire. Mm-hmm. But in a world where you could offer him a year and a few million to like come in here and be a safety, he could still play a little bit. Had a big couple plays against Washington, and he knows the defense really well. They might want somebody like that.
I know everyone would roll their eyes at that just because we've done this old veteran thing before.
They're
but I'm telling you,
need a couple of mentors who can implement the defense.
That's a part of it. But also with free agency, the salary cap will go away pretty quickly. If you start big game shopping and fill a couple of big needs the way that I want them to, you're going to have to do a couple things on the cheap. We talked about this when we were doing positional breakdowns last week. The tight end spot. I'd love to have a first round or second round or third round tight end that maybe is an answer that's long term. That's awesome. You may not be able to do that. You may not be able to afford that. So you can dip into a pretty rich free agent market and not have to pay premium, but you can go get a 32-year-old guy somewhere along the way. You can fill your roster out with guys like that. You just can't major it anymore. Instead of it being the thing you do, it can be something you also do.